What's up, y'all?
What's going on?
Let us know how we're sounding. Coming to you live from Lake Worth Beach, Florida. What's up? And today is Stanley Kubrick's birthday. So we're going to be talking Kubrick. You know, my friends actually call me the Kubrick's Cube. So,
Why?
no, terrible joke. But we're gonna be unraveling this puzzle, right? We're gonna be I'm a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick. Big fan. I know my brother is too. And yeah, I've got some astrological insights into his rabbit holes because I know everyone's talked about the whole moon landing. You know, that's kind of like that territory's been covered in the YouTube sphere, but and his other movies and the mainstream MK Ultra, fluoride in the water stuff. You know, a lot of that stuff has been covered. So we're gonna address a lot of that, but we've got some very interesting little tidbits and a whole new approach of looking at Stanley Kubrick's movies from an
Nice.
astrological lens. And this is valid. This changes things. What's his name? Rob Ager. Is that the Stanley Kubrick guy on YouTube? I always confuse him with Jay Dyer because they both do Stanley Kubrick reviews. But whatever. That's what we're going to be getting into tonight. And of course, we've got Shem here, Mr. Jacobs from Ohio.
Going on?
What's up? What's up?
Not too much. I don't really like movies too much, but the Stanley Kubrick films, I always enjoyed the way they were shot, and they always had this uniqueness to them. I'm not sure if other films around that same time period had similar features, but yeah, I mean, I feel like those are actually good quality films.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick is really in a class of his own. It's like classical music, orchestral music for the eyes. It's as good as it gets.
Yeah, I heard he had an extremely high IQ. There's another channel that does Stanley Kubrick uh, breakdowns called One-Eyed Jack. Apparently, the guy was like killed or something. So, but he has like an archive of an entire series. I just came across it today because a friend had posted something about it. Kind of lined up with today. It was weird. I haven't had a chance to watch them yet, but it was. You remember how we were talking about the blood over intent thing?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Well, the person that told me about this has done that ritual before, apparently. So it's kind of, I don't know, kind of all tied together. Very strange stuff. But yeah, she made the claim that he was like assassinated for putting out certain information. So I don't know how true that is. Haven't watched the videos yet. I do plan on checking them out though.
Right.
One Jack. What's your favorite Kubrick film?
Man, Eyes Wide Shut. It's got to be. I know that's probably a basic answer, but so good. I've probably
I
seen
like
it.
Clockwork.
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange was the one that I always enjoyed the most. I also liked Full Metal Jacket a lot, even though it's clearly just like with Eyes Wide Shut. I feel like Clockwork Orange and Full Metal Jacket are kind of you know propaganda in multiple ways. You could say to influence people to behave in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yo,
lack
what's
of
up?
a lack of morals in situations where you should hold yourself accountable. I guess.
Yeah, but he's all, there's a reason for what he does. It's like the grim fairy tales. It's like the best societies have the scariest fairy tales because, you know, the more you can, it's like negative visualization almost. You ever heard that? Instead of like all this positive visualization, like positive, affirming,
See,
manifesting
that's
abundance,
why I don't watch
it's
movies though, because I think it should be the opposite. But I mean, like if you have actual just only positive people to look up into society, then a majority of people will just emulate that behavior because it's clear that a majority of, at least in America, a majority of people emulate their entire personality from either celebrities or movie characters, a combination of a couple or just one or two that maybe it could even be one. So they have all these terrible characters, all these terrible celebrities out there, and that's the reason why a lot of the behaviors in society exist today, in my opinion.
Sure. But also, film does emulate what people are doing, like at, at that time, you know?
To
So
us,
it works both ways.
probably more today since there's more communication among people. But back then, when film first started coming out, I mean, people couldn't really communicate that easily, so it was used as more of a tool to direct society, in my opinion.
Well, here let's get into Stanley a little bit. Why he's worth talking about? Because hey, I'm not a big movie guy. I'm not like a film critic or lover of cinema, but I'm a lover of Stanley Kubrick movies. I'm a Kubrickophile, whatever you want to say. Totally. And just going back to the whole classical music for the eyes, right? It's really just a step beyond what Hollywood has ever pumped out. And another one of my favorite movies would be Lawrence of Arabia. That's up there. So Eyes Wide Shut, Lawrence of Arabia. Those are pretty high up on my favorite movie list. And Stanley had the cinematography like Lawrence of Arabia. It had this stunning, you know, lens work, the things he was
Yeah,
famous for, natural lighting, the things you hear about in documentaries. But then the psychology is done so tastefully. The twists, anything he puts into his movies, it never comes off cheesy unless it's supposed to, right? And you could say entire movies of his are cheesy, but it's just done so tastefully that it puts you into this like Lynchian David Lynch, dream state space without explicitly doing it with like psychedelia and things like that. It's just masterfully crafted. It slips you into different moods that whatever.
yeah,
Blah blah
no,
blah. Like I said,
you're right.
not a film critic. I don't care. But
So, what's up with the astrology? Are we gonna start with Kubrick, or are we gonna start with one of the movies?
yeah, we're gonna start with Kubrick. Also, something worth noting is Kubrick made a conscious decision as his life went on, as his career went on, to distance himself from Hollywood. And if I'm not mistaken, he would only use these big studios and their resources at the end of his career for um, what's it called? Just circulating it out to the public,
Distribution.
distribution. Yeah, and that by the end of his career, he attempted to have as much creative control as he could, and yeah.
It's
So
almost
the thing about him saying that he's like a Hollywood director or he's one of them, I would right off the bat say he's probably came up in that world. He saw a lot of it, and that led him to distance himself. There's other things that are very radical about Stanley Kubrick, things that set him apart from the whole Hollywood scene, the movement, and no matter who you might think he's rubbing shoulders with. I gotta say, I think he's one of the good guys. At the end of the day, he's one of the good guys. I think he's a genius, and that's my bias. The
I
unfiltered.
agree. I agree he's a genius, but are you familiar with his background at all and his family history and stuff like that?
Yeah, his family history is something pretty interesting because he happened to be a you know uh, Jewish man who, at the same time, was very critical of his own people and had specific admiration for a tiny little mustache man, and that's even on his Wikipedia. So he had some bizarre infatuations. We'll get into that. We'll save that a little further down the road. But I've gone
Yeah,
down those rabbit holes a little bit.
there's definitely a reason for his infatuation, but we won't get into that because it'll be too detracting from the subject. So, but yes, I agree. He's a genius, and his family came over as a result of population moving from a certain area during like dark times over in Polish Lithuania area with all
Toast.
the ghettos and all that good stuff. The deluge, cool stuff. But yeah,
Yeah. So let's get into it. First, we're gonna pull up the. Let's get a picture of him. Brandon, could we get a picture of Stanley Kubrick, please? Oh, I got this one.
yeah, I was introduced to him through an ex-girlfriend actually. Because I've never really been big into movies, but
Yeah. So here's Stanley Kubrick when he's, I don't know, 50, 40. I'd
looks like
give
he's
it
up
to
to
him.
no good.
Yeah. He's got a very Shylock look about him. But I love Stanley Kubrick. He was a Leo. Stanley Kubrick was a Leo. July 26th. That's at the front end of Leo. It totally shines through his work. Him being a Leo, him having this huge personality, big ego, right? That's another Leo concept. Will, desire, bravery, courage, those are Leo things, right? Courage means to have heart, like the lion's heart, Coeur de Leon. And yeah, July 26th, he was born a Leo. I got to refresh on the year here 1928. But I've got his birth chart right here. So now that you've all seen his face, for those that don't know, he was initially a photographer, and he was a big chess player. Got into almost like journalistic photography, storytelling with pictures too. And then he just ended up getting into movies, right? And his friends and family helped him fund some of his first movies, short films.
I
And then
think
eventually,
it was through inheritance when his father passed away or something that he funded his first film.
oh
I'm
yeah.
remembering it correctly. Maybe it was his
And
grandfather.
you could say he had pretty humble beginnings, right? Everyone said he was talented, said he was smart. His Wikipedia says he was like a mediocre student, but was very smart, high IQ. And yeah, I'm not a no Stanley Kubrick expert or anything, but I've watched Eyes Wide Shut probably about 100 times.
Wow.
And oh yeah, background. It's like background music. And then also you've got watching his movies backwards and all that stuff. You know, I've done all those tricks, like watching them front to back at the same time, and they meet in the middle and stuff like that. And although, what is it, Room 237, seen that.
That's a
Leon,
documentary, right?
I think so, yeah. Leon Vitali, his personal assistant. We're going to be talking about Leon Vitali too. Very, very interesting thing about Leon Vitali. But let's look at Stanley's old birth chart here, his natal chart.
Meyer butt reeks, yeah. Very interesting stuff, huh? How that works.
All right, this is Stanley's birth chart, y'all. This is astrotheme.com. It's my preferred website to use. And basically, right off the bat, he's a Leo. Leo's a fire sign. But what else jumps out is he's got a grand trine in fire. So a grand fire trine. That's an equilateral triangle in going between three of the same element. So he's got a major planet in Leo, a major planet in Sagittarius, a major planet in Aries. All three fire signs are weighed down, are, have a big character being represented on that stage. So having a grand fire trine, the guy from Ghost Hunters or Ghost, what's it called?
Ghost
Whatever.
Whisperers.
No, it's not Ghost Hunters. It's the people on the Travel Channel. Zach Bagans. Zach Bagans has a grand fire trine. Logan Paul has a grand fire trine. It's a big entertainer thing. It's a big controversy thing, like being stepping on people's toes, causing a riot, which Stanley Kubrick did once in his life too. And it's a big instigator, agitator, but also leadership, like burning fire. It's pretty much just being somewhat as fiery as the chart can get. It's the most dignified position for all the fire signs to have. And yeah, Aleister Crowley went as far as saying that a grand trine can cause a serial killer or a criminal because they're so they have things so easy that they can navigate life with with getting anything they want. The charisma is almost too much. Like I don't know what Ted Bundy had, but like a Ted Bundy type where they're able to conceal almost every. Logan Paul's a good example of a grand fire trine. He's just like, I'm a wrestler, I'm a fighter, I'm a instigator, agitator, I'm a badass. Also very foolish, right? He's an Aries, so they're the fool, but blah blah blah. Stanley Kubrick's a Leo, so his sun is in Leo, right? If you're born, what is it, July 22nd to August 22nd, you're a Leo. Plus or minus a day or two. But having the sun in Leo up there at the top of his chart, I'll get my mouse on here. This is Leo. And Leo's up at the top of his chart. His ascendant, they tell us, is Scorpio. Now I see that. When you see people who are Scorpios or Scorpio ascendants, even Scorpio moons, having top 3 in Scorpio, very often will you get these dark patches around the eyes. And boy, does Stanley Kubrick have that. Sometimes they can't shake that their whole life. Having these raccoon eyes, big Scorpio trait. A lot of the Scorpios I know have dark rings around the eyes. That can be a mineral deficiency, but it can also just be a Scorpio thing. They have these raccoony. Yeah.
Well, he
Almost
also,
like
I mean, he's a perfectionist too, so he's like, he's focused all the time. He's always his mind is probably always thinking and always active operating, so he probably doesn't get much rest.
oh yeah. Now, Scorpio ascendant, also to your point about detail, the word detail goes back to Scorpio. To analyze. Yeah. Detail. That's what part of the body's at. The tail end. There's another one. Analyze, detail, whatever. But Scorpio rules those things to penetrate deeply into a subject or elsewise, right? But Stanley Kubrick, they tell us Scorpio ascendant. I believe that. I can see it because you don't want to put all your eggs in. You never want to put all your eggs all in the same basket, all in one basket for someone's birth time when they lived a long time ago and you can't verify it. You don't want to put all your eggs in that basket, meaning all the house placements will be off. But if you don't know for sure, you can always just leave it blank, and you'll get a kind of a more vague chart without the house placements, but you'll still get to see the you'll still get to see what sign most of the planets are in and the aspects between the planets. So, yeah, you never want to put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to someone's birthday. But if you know astrology pretty well, you can look at Stanley Kubrick and be like, yeah, he's got a Scorpio ascendant, right? The dark persona, dark, dark features. Scorpio's black eyes, black hair, black features, right? Just darkness. It's like the dark of night. Scorpio very often likes to wear black. So Stanley Kubrick, he's a Leo, but well, why isn't he shining super bright? You know, dressing flamboyantly and like Leos are known to do. Well, he's got this scorpionic influence that's very much darkening it, and also making him more detail oriented, analytical. Scorpios are passionate too. They're the stay up all night type. They get obsessed. Obsessed is a Scorpio word. Absurd. Here's some Scorpio words, and you're going to hear them. You're going to see them in Stanley Kubrick movies. And we'll get back to Leo, but Leo and where the sun is, where the ascendant is. That's where you start off when you're doing a birth chart. But Stanley Kubrick's. Well, let's list some Scorpio words: absurd, obscene, obsolete, obsessed, obsessive, and obsidian. Right, obsidian's big time Scorpio stone. So that whole root right there, Stanley Kubrick really embodies a lot of those adjectives, words. And being a Leo, he has this me attitude, which comes across in the documentaries about him. But then the Scorpio, good comment right there, brings that secretive, up all night, more reclusive, obsessive attitude. And one of the commonalities between Leo and Scorpio is a big tendency for OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So the big time Scorpio thing and Leo thing. Stanley, I wouldn't say had a big ego, but he had a big personality, which is a Leo thing. And
What about his?
getting more, and this isn't something against him, but Leos get more recognition and praise than others for less work, for the same if not less work. Leos get more recognition and praise typically. They can tend to be the golden child, to be the star child, you were saying, Sean?
He seems like he has a lack of empathy, or he's like cynical towards
Oh,
other people.
that's a good topic. That's another commonality between Leo and Scorpio. They're two of the most cutthroat signs too. Leo is all Leos are borderline narcissists, right? And I hate using that term. I cringe when people use it. It's used so overused today. People using the word narcissist today, the people who are labeling everyone in their life a narcissist, they're the narcissists 99% of the time. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But if we can use that word in the most general meaning, then Leos are generally narcissists. They burn so bright they just can't see the worth in others or the value or the light that they're trying to shine to. They can be so overpowering. But people like that too. People want a Leo to walk into the room. People want a Leo to walk into a party. They often have a life of the party attitude and charisma. I mean, man, my grandpa was a Leo. He was a salesman. He was like a drug rep too. And he could sell anything to anybody. It was like scary. So the salesman, just think about the word salesman. Salzman. Sun man. The sun. Sal's. Salt. Soul. Sol. The salt, right? That's Leo. Totally. Leos make the best salesmen. Cold callers. These Wolf of Wall Street types. I don't know his birthday, but
Ye-
Leos are the best lead. The word leader comes from Leo too. So the shining bright. You got to have a certain lack of empathy to be a good leader. At the end of the day, to some extent, you have to have the discretion. You have to have the cutthroat mentality. Leos are leaders, and being a director means you have to be a leader. You have to put up with a lot of whiny actors and actresses, and you gotta crack the whip. So Leos are known to crack the whip, especially when people aren't on board with what they're doing, and then Scorpios will crack the whip. Also, and both signs and animals are known to play with their prey. Leos, cats. Leo's the most sadistic sign of the zodiac.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's like,
Yes.
well, I would disagree. I think he does see the light or the talent in other people, but he uses the cutthroat methods and kind of plays with them a little bit, like what you're saying, to get the best out of them, not worrying about how that really affects them. Just focus on that end goal and bringing the best out of the people around him, even though, it could be taken the wrong way very easily.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get back to his chart here. He's a Leo. Leo's big personality, big hair too. He's kind of known for his hair and his mane. That's a big Leo trait. You might think it's kind of cliche, but it's so true. Leos are always known for their hair. Robert Plant. Anyone who knows music, Robert Plant and Lane Staley. Same zodiac sign, same sun and moon. Robert Plant and Lane Staley. I mean, almost the same voice, almost the same persona, just different era. So he's a Leo, entertainer. Leisure comes from the word leisure comes from Leo. Leadership comes from Leo. But he's also a Scorpio ascendant, like we said. So that brings an element of darkness, obsessive tendencies, analytical aptitude, and they're the most diligent sign of the zodiac, Scorpio. Like I said, up all night type, sink their teeth into something and don't stop till it's done. And then you have on top of that the fire trine, like I said. So he has an extra brightness, burning charisma about him. This fire trine, it's like his potential for entertainment was through the roof. Just look into a fire trine and other actors and actresses and notable people who have them. Very often leaders, wartime leaders, wrestlers, fighters, killers too, some of the time. So he's got this fire trine going on. And let's just go around his chart. Moon in the first house. I don't know what to say about that, but he's got a also rather moon. When the moon is in the first house, that can generally be seen as like a fat or pale or sunken face, wider features on the face. The first house is what's on the face. It's where the sun's rising. And second house, he's got Saturn in the second house. Now, we're just kind of breezing on through this because you've got so much to talk about. But having Saturn in the second house, he would have been a penny pincher, big time penny pincher. Yeah,
Naturally.
he's infamous for underpaying certain people and kind of manipulating his well, don't you want to be in a movie with me, so that he wouldn't have to pay certain people. And I'm not speaking poorly of him, but he was a penny pincher. He wasn't in it for the money. He didn't want to make a ton of money or blow the studio's money, but he was also a penny pincher. And having having Saturn in the second house here meant, funds probably were a lot thinner in his life than you'd think. And that's not a death sentence, it's not a curse or anything, but Saturn, that's it's just the most difficult planet. Second house is the house of income, earned income, material possessions, wealth. And Saturn retrograde, that'll, loosen it up a little bit, but it's the toughest sign of the zodiac. So some of his toughest lessons were probably in this house. And it also rules a lot of other things, like he might have struggled with eating and wasting time and laziness. And that might strike you as, Stanley Kubrick, he got so much done, but it took a lot of time between projects. And clearly he, ate a fair amount, right? So, second house is about indulgences too. So, Saturn there retrograde, don't want to spend too much time on it, but third house, not much. Fourth house, not much. Here's the big one. Fifth house. Fifth house. Uranus in the fifth house. Now that's huge. Uranus is the revolutionary, the innovator, the genius. Fifth house is entertainment, especially choreographed entertainment like dance or play, sport, aerobics, things like that. It's the house of Leo, fifth house, but he's got Uranus, the revolutionary, the innovator, the genius, in the fifth house. Fifth house is where you see a lot of actors getting their talent and grace, is in the fifth house. That is the house of entertainment and leisure. That's what I was trying to say there. So the fifth house is a house that I often associate with film because of its emphasis on entertainment. And you probably wouldn't look to drama or horror in that and see that represented in the fifth house. But as far as film being a general entertainment and something that you spend money and go spend a long part of your day to do for leisure, it's got to be ruled by Leo and therefore the fifth house. Stanley having Uranus in the fifth house shows that he would revolutionize entertainment, which he did, and he'd also be considered a genius in that field. Stanley, and this is Janus, Uranus. Why is it the only planet that we use the Greek name instead of the Roman? Because Uranus, Janus is where we get the word genius. Janus was omitted, and it was Uranus instead from the Greek. Why is that? Why is it the only planet, the only god planet, who we use the Greek name instead of the Roman? So that's a big mystery.
Because it's hiding the double-formed nature that's supposed to be kept secret according to Kabbalistic beliefs, in my opinion.
Yes, and it's also probably omitted because it's the most gender-neutral character in all of astrology. And it's why the Age of Aquarius rules gender neutrality in LGBT, QRSTUV, XWIZ. All that stuff is going on in this age. But yeah, so we've got Grand Trine. What's up?
I was just gonna say, because Janus is a double-faced god. Just like what I'm referring to here is like the letters Sadi in Hebrew, like in the Zohar and Talmud and stuff like that, talks about how when God was creating the alphabet, creating the world, in each letter of the alphabet was trying to be the first letter to represent creation. Sadi wanted to do it, and God said, Sadi, you can't be the first to be creation because of the mystery of what you represent, which is the original form of humanity or whatever. So I don't know, that could all tie in based on what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's continue.
So Uranus in the fifth house, revolutionizing entertainment. That's the easiest way to understand that placement. And then here's one to your point, Shem, about lacking empathy or kind of not being ruled, not being governed by like the everyday, conventional, happy, what people expect to see in a movie. Stanley really veered away from and he didn't shy away from dark leading characters, right? Villainous leading characters and things like that. But he did it in also a tasteful way, like we were saying, where it wasn't like where you get into this tap out shirt, new metal type like badass, where you know a bad villain can be very cheesy. Stanley Kubrick's his choice of stories that he made that he would make his movies out of, they're almost all adaptations of short stories or books that he had read before. But
Well, yeah, that ties into his attention to detail, which is another reason why he had so much time in between each project because of the amount of research he would do, and he was such a perfectionist to the point to where he like if there was extras in the scene, each one of them would have like specific things they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to just saying like, "Hey, can I hang out?" You know what I mean?
yeah. So that brings us to having Jupiter right on the descendant. Now, from an artistic point of view, having Jupiter on the descendant it's like having Jesus, I don't want to say on the cross, but at like a very low point. Like Jupiter is at his lowest point in the chart. Jupiter doesn't want to be right there on the sunset in the fall time. Jupiter rules, um, expansion and the time of abundance, not and it rules Sagittarius, but in terms of seasonally, Jupiter's wants to be in the kingdom of heaven, which is summer or springtime. And having it in the seventh house, Jupiter is not so compatible with the seventh house. Having it on the descendant could show that he married into wealth. Having Jupiter in the seventh house is a big one for marrying somebody wealthier than you, or your partner that you're married to, or your lifelong partner ends up bringing in a lot of income for the two of you, for the family. Having Jupiter in the seventh house is a big placement for inheritance or income via the wife or partner. So if you're a woman and you have Jupiter in the seventh house, you can see that as your man, will do well for himself. You'll have money coming in from your significant other, right? Having it right there at the cusp of the sixth house, though, would bring it closer to the place of work. So he made a lot of money doing what he did. But having Jupiter on the descendant right there, this is kind of like the most deceptive piece of the chart right there. It's the exact spot where it crosses into the second half of the day and the second half of the year. That's why Libra is the scales. It's in between both halves of the year. Having Jupiter right there on the seventh house is psychologically, artistically, the way I perceive that, how I see that in his movies, is he flirts with good and evil. He toes the line. He crosses the line. And he's subjecting this sense of good, morality, benevolence to its toughest critiques, to its toughest tests, pitfalls, and he's exploiting those in his movies. And having Jupiter on the descendant right there it's a Luciferian influence. The word Lucifer goes back to Libra. It's a towing the line, free will wrestling with morality. The age-old serpent in the tree, Garden of Eden. Eve comes from evil. Eve is also Libra. It's the evening, evens the year, evens the day. It's the in between the two halves. So having Jupiter right there, it's a testy placement for Jupiter. Because Jupiter's the planet of morality, benevolence, abundance, gratitude, and goodness, peace. So he really puts those to the test, and it's almost like they're getting thrown to the side or about to get thrown out in the trash right there. That's one way I interpret that, Jupiter right there.
Yeah, seems pretty
Seven
accurate.
house.
I'd say that's a good interpretation.
And then Mars is right there too. It's not far off. They're not conjunct, but Jupiter shares that house with Mars. So Mars is the god of war. Mars is the god of competition, athletic competition, discipline, martial arts, things like that. And they're in the seventh house. He also probably, this is a big theme. It might be oversimplified, but having Mars in the seventh house, that's having somewhat of a combative relationship with your significant other. And I don't know much about his personal life, but this is prone to arguments with partners, your wife, husband. Having Mars, it's the planet of arguments too, conflict, war.
I think he married one of the singers or actresses that he had on one of his movies or something. I'll look it up. Why not?
I think it was his high school sweetheart initially. I don't know if he got married more than once.
We're about to find out. Yeah, he had 3 wives. So.
He got married to his high school sweetheart. I don't know much about the other two.
One was a Austrian-born dancer. The other one was a German actress and painter, and then the first one must have been the high school sweetheart, which they were only married for 3 years. 2 years to the second wife, and then the last one, I guess, he stayed with for the rest of his life.
True. Having Mars in the seventh house, that can just be, it's spice, it's heat, it can be passion too. I don't want to get nasty, but having Mars in the seventh house it's like having cayenne pepper dumped in. Mars rules cayenne pepper. It rules heat. Some say it rules cinnamon. All red hot, warming things, drying things too. So having Mars in a sign or a house is like having cayenne pepper dumped out in that house, activated, irritated, agitated. Well, then we have the ninth house, and this is an interesting one because this kind of is where you get Stanley's love of philosophy. And ninth house is the house of philosophy, travel, higher learning, right? So education is like what you learn in a book, and today higher learning is like going to college or whatever, but higher learning to me is like what's above education, what's above material knowledge. You can meet a 70-year-old man who's not educated, but they're very wise, right? The philosopher is not always the most knowledgeable, but it's something other than that. And philo means love, so phia means what? Knowledge or wisdom. So lover of knowledge or lover of wisdom. And ninth house, you're going to notice he's got a stellium in his ninth house. That means 4 planets. So that's a huge dominating feature to have in a birth chart. He's got a grand trine in fire, so a major planet in all the fire signs. And then he's got 4 planets in the ninth house. That's a stellium. And this is another big feature in his chart. He's got Mercury conjunct Pluto. this is another big dose of radical extremist themes, vice, the underbelly of society, darkness, the underworld. And having Pluto's like extremism. Pluto is Mars, is the octave of Mars. Mars to the umpteenth degree. It's Mars. Mars rules war, so Pluto rules genocide. Mars rules spice, so Pluto rules, like nuclear weapons, right? Like radiation. So it's Mars rules heat, Pluto rules nuclear fallout, things like that. So Pluto is like this. It's Mars to the extreme, and it rules extremes in general. And Pluto is also the god of the underworld. So having Mercury's how you express yourself, how you talk. Mercury is it's very much how you talk, and it tweaks the sun sign. So the Mercury's never more than one sign away from your sun sign. So if your sun's in Leo, you can only have Mercury in Cancer, Leo, or Virgo. So, that's another trick to astrology. That kind of proves astrology pretty much. Mercury can never be more than one sign away from your sun sign. So test this all with your own birth charts. If I'm a Sagittarius, which I am, my Mercury can only be in Scorpio, Sagittarius, or Cancer or Capricorn. If Shem's a Pisces, which he is, his Mercury can only be in Aries, Pisces, or Aquarius. Either the sign that you're born in, or one in either direction. Mercury is on like a chain. That's why they tell us Mercury spins around the sun. It's almost like on a leash. It's a servant to the sun. That's why Hermes is always the servant. It's chained closely to the sun. Closest to the sun. That's why the Mercury race, the Moorish race, Mercury, the darkest skinned people on the planet are ruled by Mercury because they are closest to the sun. Chard. It's but
Mercury.
it's true. Mercury. We get whatever. Topic for another day. But Mercury conjunct Pluto, that's a big placement to have for this extreme topics, extremism, and I would almost say that Pluto is best represented in pop culture by Stanley Kubrick movies. Making like a satire to the satire is ruled by Saturn, of course, but this black humor, like blacker than black. The devil's Saturn's gray, Pluto's black. So it's black humor. It's something deeper than satire, and Stanley hit that nail on the head. So Pluto rules Scorpio too, which is where Scorpio gets those themes. Scorpionic extremism, underworld. Scorpio rules the underworld too, via Pluto. So Pluto conjunct Mercury, that's a big one for how he expresses himself, the dialogue he puts into his films. That's all very Mercury related. Having a stellium in the ninth house, 4 planets in the ninth house, Mercury, Pluto, the Sun, Venus. That is his love of philosophy and bending the mind and taking people far away. And I hate to say it, space travel, right? That's like the ultimate Sagittarius concept. Sagittarius rules travel and astrology, some would say, in general, horoscopes. The word horse scope. Come on. Horse scope. Sagittarius rules horses and sharpshooting, archery, the target, center or the centaur. center of the bullseye or the centaur? The bullseye. Bullseye, the cusp between Gemini, bull's eye, the cusp between Taurus the bull and Gemini, the gem in the eye, is directly across from Scorpio, the tip, the penetration, and Sagittarius, the missile, the Sagittarius is the ballistic thing. It's there's another word for that. Projectile. Sagittarius rules projectiles. Scorpio rules penetration. That's the cusp. Scorpio is like the tip of the arrow. That's one way to look at it. But that's directly across the zodiac from the cusp between Gemini and Taurus. Taurus the bull. Gemini, gem in eye. Come on. Bullseye, center, the centaur. Center of the universe or the centaur of the universe? Because the Milky Way is in Sagittarius. So what they tell us is the center of the universe is in the centaur of the universe. Okay. Enough astro-fapping. Enough. I'm just astro-fapping on that one. Astro circle jerking.
Penetrating.
So, stellium in the 9th house. It's like stellium in the 8th house can bring an association with assassination, like JFK had a stellium in the 8th house, so just one sign over. He had 4 planets or more in the 8th house, and boom, big assassination. His death was the most famous thing about him. That's a big 8th house thing. Santos Bonacci had 4 planets in the 8th house. Those are kind of the only 2 I always talk about, but association with death or violent. Stellium in the 8th house. It's like an over accumulation of energy in one part of the zodiac. So having that in the 9th house, Stanley was obsessed with some of these concepts. It's too vague to say he was obsessed with travel. I think most people who get money love to travel, but he was actually not much of a traveler when it came to making his movies in different places. He would kind of almost deceptively film almost all his movies in England, or most of the ones that we all know about, that he would film in parts of England that were staged to look like somewhere else. So he was very crafty and creative with his set designs. That's what set him apart too. But 9th house is, what else is it? This is where he gets some of his probably more of his lighthearted influence too. Any joviality that he had would have been coming from this placement. 4 planets in the 9th house. That's like another dose of charisma too. That's ruled by a fire sign. That's another big fire thing. So Stanley Kubrick was practically on fire with all these placements. This was like a red hot, charismatic guy, despite the dark scorpionic external appearance. Remember, that's Scorpio. That's your external layer. Or sorry, that's the ascendant, which his was Scorpio. That's your external layer, your wrapper, your veneer, your facade. That's the ascendant. So he had Scorpio on the ascendant. So to people who didn't know him that well, he was like, yeah, the guy looked like a dark loner. He had like school shooters syndrome. But no. If you got close to him, he was charismatic as could be and could light up a room. And what you see, the darkness on his face, is probably just the toll that took, being that charismatic, that actually extroverted. They'd say he's shy and stuff, but it's hard to say someone's an introvert when they got out there and talked to everyone. And he almost snuck into a lot of his early not auditions, but his big breaks, were kind of by the stroke of luck, he got in there.
Stroke of luck.
Stroke of luck, yeah. In Hollywood, that means something else.
Well, not to mention his background. So he's not picking. Let's just say he's not picking between working at Walmart or being a delivery driver or something like that. He's, you know, his life choices were a little bit different than his opportunities were a little bit different than most people out there. But he definitely earned what he had, so there's no doubt about that. The talent is there. What about
Having
this?
all
What about this 10th house? What's going on there?
well, something else to say about the ninth house is he's got all those planets up high there. Lots of Sagittarius characteristics being magnified by that stellium in the ninth house. But the key element right there, he's got Sun at the top of his chart. That's big ambition, ember burning. That's a solar stone to mineral amber. But all those planets at the top of his chart, this is big time ambition. He had ambition. This is another burning the candle all night long. This is like I don't want to say grinding because it's also like a big blessing. Like, these people are uplifted in work. Having a big placement at the top of your chart like that, a lot of planets at the top of your chart, it's an uplifting, ambitious placement. Almost like they don't care about home. Home is like at the bottom of the chart, the fourth house. Fourth house down at the bottom of your chart, that's your foundation. That's like your couch potatoes. Sitting at home, have a hard time getting out of bed, have a hard time leaving their foundation, their roots, their family, have a hard time not being a rock or like a shelter-based person. Having all the signs at the top of the chart, though, that's almost too much ambition. Like you forget your kid's birthday type people, like you were at work, babe, come on, what I forgot, I'm sorry, that's like these babe, you need a break from work, you're losing yourself in work. That's something that having a lot of planets at the top of the chart, it's ambition, it's up, pulling them up out of bed, not much sinking them down. So it's a blessing, and it can be a tough thing. But the biggest thing to know, this is another key placement for the chart, having Venus right on the MC. That tells you this guy is a beautifier. He is obsessed with beauty, creating beauty, balance, harmony, cosmetics, beauty. This is his attention to detail coming through with beauty. His films are like works of art. Every shot is like a perfect painting. I don't think anyone can deny that. Even the most dimly lit, insignificant hallways in his movies look like, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, right? So
Yeah, it's very difficult to look away during one of his movies. The cinematography is incredible.
Venus at the top of the chart, Venus right on MC. People consider MC like your also ambition. We're up at the top of your chart. It's your highest calling. It's your highest potential. Top of the chart. It's your apex. Having Venus up there is a huge one for for women, for other more spry, youthful. Different body types, different things like that. If you have Venus up at the top of your chart like that, that's a model right there. That's either you're a model, like you're beautiful yourself, or you're going to be obsessed with beauty your whole life. Venus at the top of the chart like that, it's great for interior design, decorating, jewelry design, cosmetics. Having it on the ascendant could do the same thing. That'll be more like looking beautiful yourself. Venus on the ascendant is like an age-old beautiful mark of beauty. Having Venus on the ascendant, it's like having Mars on the ascendant will make you red in the face, and having acne, inflammation, skin issues, but also make you tough and confident and warrior-like. But Having Venus at the top of the chart right there, that's soft, it's beautiful, it's romance. So there's certain things about love that Stanley probably had down to a T. Stanley, you could say he wasn't so much preoccupied with love like some people are. Some people, it's like love is all they can think about. And with fire signs and this much fire in his chart and such not much water or earth, he's definitely going to be prone to a lack of emotion, no lack of passion. Right, that's kind of the difference. There's the fiery element to passion and the watery element to emotion. Is what separates them. But having Venus up there at the top of the chart, obsessed with beauty and harmony visually too, in Leo too. It's in the sign of Leo, performance, entertainment. And in the ninth house, but pretty much right there in the MC. That is like his highest calling. That is his greatest potential, greatest gift too. Is that Venus right on the MC, on the midheaven. Big time, that's where he gets his love of harmony and his ability to, for those that don't know, Stanley Kubrick was a masterful set designer, and his use of camera tricks and, harmony. Like he would glue sacred geometry stencils like on the front of his camera or his lens. So when he's looking at the picture, he can place characters and things in different sections of this stencil on his. And they're talking about it when you watch these documentaries. There's two documentaries where they talk about the stencils or whatever that they would use on the camera, and it's like, hang on, you mean he was like staring? They were staring at a like a flower of. They were using like flowers of life, Fibonacci spirals. They were using Fibonacci camera lenses that had different proportions marked out so they could line up a person, head to feet in these certain shots. Very interesting. And they could, if there was a hallway or if there was extra depth in one part of the shot, they could weigh it in the right section. Like if there was a lot of activity in the shot, there was almost like a cheat sheet, visual cheat sheet of where the eye wants to see things become more complex or become simpler. And they would use this, and they became so matter of fact with it when they were doing their shots that they'd be, hey, go get me the. They're like, yeah. So we were doing this. They had like a Fibonacci phi golden ratio stencil, and then he's like, you know what? Let's quadruple it. So then they had four of them, like in each corner. They rotated it, almost like a swaz, almost like a swaz, where it's the same stencil now being represented four times in the frame. And he was filming like half The Shining like that, and it was crazy. So it's hard to describe without seeing it, but maybe one of you guys, Brandon or Yushem, can find one of the stencils that he'd used. But it was pretty much just like the flower of life with like a phi spiral, golden ratio spiral. And he was openly using sacred geometry for his framing things in shot, in view. And then Neptune in the 10th house, man, Neptune is psychedelia, psychedelics, psychiatry, psychology, psyche. It's also the mystery planet. He made a career, 10th house career, right? That's the MC is the shift into the 10th house. That's why it rules ambition, career, highest potential. 10th house is what that rules in general too. So having Neptune in the 10th house, he made a career of mystery and psychology, right? He's the most Freudian director there is. He's the most, I think Lynch is the more Jungian guy, and Kubrick is the more Freudian guy. Kubrick's who made me have a little bit more of an appreciation for Freud, because that could be pretty soul crushing.
Looks like the stencil might be copyrighted this for the documentaries or something because can't find any images of it. I saw stuff like that, but we can find like a picture of the camera with the actual stencils. I'm sad that I won't be able to participate with the breakdown of the movies. I got to get going here in a couple minutes.
That's all right. No sweat. I think Robert Phoenix might join. Spencer from Florida might join. My brother might join. But yeah, those aren't. No, it's not that one. That's impressive. That's something he would do all the time. But this was not the. I don't even think he was using stencils on those. I think he was just lining them up by eye. That's impressive. That thing. Yeah, it's something more like that with the yellow. Yeah, with the yellow. It's a little bit more like that. He'd use something like that, basically, where whatever's kind of the busyness going on in the shot would be in the more
Stanley Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
High attention to detail.
Here we got some tips. Tips coming in. Chungus 500 with the $10. Genius has no material explanation. It's a trident. Couldn't agree more. Grant with the $1.99. Appreciate that. Zalero Morales. Or ZL. I don't know how to say it. Whatever. Thanks for the $10. Pronounced. Oh, here's his name. Zalarum. Zalarum. Thanks for the $10. Have you watched Owen Benjamin's interview, Kubrick's daughter? It's great. Much love, you guys. I haven't seen it. I heard that he did that. I heard that. I think she said something like he wasn't in on the moon landing. That wasn't. That's just what I heard, was that she didn't really spill too many beans, or not the beans that most people were expecting her to spill. But I never watched it. Never got around to, actually. Did you ever watch that, Shem?
Yeah, I've never even seen an Owen Benjamin video besides something about him trying to like build a compound and getting a bunch of people to send him money to do that. Oh.
So yeah, that's all there is to say. Well, there's a lot more to say about his birth chart. You can look at the aspects between the planets. But we're already into fucking over an hour into this. Gotta keep it moving. Something I also wanted to talk about was Leon Vitali. Let's see if they have his birth chart. Nope. But we're going to notice Stanley Kubrick is July 26th. Now, I argue, I'm proclaiming to all who listen that Stanley Kubrick was a master astrologer. Master astrologer. He wasn't open about it. He didn't want to be known as an astrologer. I don't think he was doing birth charts all day. I don't think he was doing people's birth charts, but I think, like me, he got into it through mythology and just being familiar with the heavens, the night sky, things like that. I don't think he was obsessed with personality birth chart type astrology. I think he was more into using them as mythological symbols, the symbolism, right? The Jungian, he was into Jung too. But the Jungian, the fact that they're eternal, recognizable, universal archetypes. He wanted to tap into that. But I'm going to go take that a step deeper because we know he did a lot of occult research, especially in his run up to The Shining. What's so funny over there?
I can't tell
Shemlock.
you. Just keep going. Just keep going.
So funny, Shemlock.
The comments are always good. But yeah, just keep going. We'll ignore it for now.
These boys are savage. But I forgot what I was gonna say, actually.
The Shining in relation to astrology.
Yeah, he was okay, I'm gonna take it a step further. We know that he did research into the occult for movies like The Shining and probably some other ones, but definitely for The Shining. He was studying the occult, studying ceremonial magic.
Studying.
Eyes wide shut, of course, but I'm saying it started with The Shining for sure. He was studying it by then. But then, meaning he was researching, we have records of all the kind of occult literature that he was peering through, researching for his movies. We do have a fair record of that from the documentaries I've seen and the websites I've looked through. But I'm going to take a step further than that. He wasn't just using astrology for its symbolism. There's two deeper layers to this. There's a astrologer called Priscilla Costello, a woman, Florida legend, who I'm very into her work, where she is all about explaining Shakespearean character building, where Shakespeare was able to generate so many characters out of thin air because he wasn't trying to be creative with character building. You don't tell an interesting story by having the most interesting character ever. Nobody cares about the backstory. And I'm being general here, and whatever. I know that there's holes to this, but nobody cares about your backstory. People want the same harmonious archetypes, the same universal ancient archetypes, right? What's his face? The Joseph Campbell's going to tell you this too. People don't want the story that's like pulled out of the most niche, random if, right? Capital I if, like, oh, imagine if this happened. Wouldn't that be cool? Like if this happened. People don't want the M. Night Shyamalan, right? That's like it's like brutalist architecture. It's like just a shock value, very quick, fleeting, worthless. With character building, telling fiction, making mythology too, crafting mythology, of course. People don't want. People don't want the same. People do want the same. Excuse me, I'm fucking stoned. People people do want the same. They're okay with the same meals every day. They're okay with the same, spice, flavoring in their cabinet. You just have to do it true, harmoniously. You can mix it up and shift it up, shake it up a little bit. Of course, you still need things to be interesting and nuanced. Mythology's nuanced across the world, nuance, but it's undeniably at its core the same foundations, the same building blocks down to the number, down to the qualities associated to those numbers. Mythology is foundational. It's founded in astrology, in the night sky, right? So, what better storytelling than the story that is universal, that all people are aware of, have access to? It's in the night sky. Shakespeare was so monumental. Not because, and oh, the Illuminati, the Globe Theater, oh, the Globism, he was a Jesuit, he was this, or the blah, 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 blah. Okay. We can worry about that another time. I've read Shakespeare. I love it. Once you realize it's just like Family Guy, you just tear through it. It's like so fun to read. Hilarious. The hardest I've ever burst out laughing from a book. Shakespeare. Endless dick jokes. Endless sexual innuendo. It's like South Park, Family Guy, and Seinfeld, and like
Zohar.
hilarious. And the Zohar, yeah. And the King James Version Bible. A lot of people
It's crazy.
A lot of people would tell you that Shakespeare is what didn't make it into the Bible. But it was largely the same people drafting those two works at the same time under the direction of Queen Elizabeth and her magical Secret Service. That's a whole other thing too. The Spear Shaker Alliance, Order of the Knights of the Palace Athena, they were called, something like that. The Order of the Spear Shaker, something like that. So
Spinoza's influence as well, even though it was before. But yeah, I gotta get going, man. Shout out to the chat. Have a good night, everyone. Peace.
We're all good, Shem. Peace. So we'll see if anyone joins. If they don't, whatever. Fuck them. We don't need them. Full steam ahead. They'll only drag us down, eh? Let's hit it. Stanley Kubrick, not only was he aware of astrology for its importance in mythology, universal archetypes, collective unconscious, all that Jung stuff. Not only was he aware of it and ready to use it in that capacity, he also, this is why I'm talking about Shakespeare, he understood how to build characters. How there's really only 5 flavors. There's really only 5 scents or planetary influences that you can kind of choose from or mix a little bit. There's only really 5 colors on the palette when it comes to taste and scent, especially taste. But it's the 2 luminaries. There's 7 planets in astrology. The 2 luminaries are not involved in this, the sun and the moon. So the 5 fingers on your hand are the 5 wandering stars of astrology. And with the 5 wandering stars of astrology, you get your 5 flavors and your 5 senses and your 5 your 5 characteristics as far as like characters in a work of fiction or mythology or just a well-crafted story. It can be a true story too, but you've got the sad, over-emotional, victimhood, feeling down about themselves, villainous, borderline villainous character, the Saturnian influence, right? So you have Saturnian characters, villainous, or they can be the good guy, but they are very down on themselves, right? And if I'm not mistaken, Hamlet is a Saturnian archetype. But you've also got, let's just look at Romeo and Juliet. Priscilla Costello talks about this. It's where I learned about this all the first time. About how good storytellers used to only draw from these 5 character types. Only 5. You have the martial type, the Venusian type, the mercurial type, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. Only 5 types. The sun and the moon are omitted, like I said. So having these 5 flavors to choose from. It makes storytelling so much easier, simpler. It's like playing chess. It's the same pieces on the board, but does it ever get boring? Does it ever get, rarely do you run into the same scenario the same exact way, right? It's always tweaked a little bit, but it's the same couple pieces, right? Not many types of pieces to choose from. Weak analogy, but having we'll go over here. This is a shot from Spartacus. But having these few character types to choose from, astrologically based, makes for more interesting storytelling, more harmonious storytelling, things that make sense universally. And Priscilla Costello, let's just take Romeo and Juliet, for example. Go look her up on YouTube, too. She does so much better job than me telling this stuff. But Romeo and Juliet, I mean, hey, Mercutio. I wonder who Mercutio is. Kind of lazy with that. Kind of got a little lazy with naming him. It's obviously Mercury, Mercutio. This is the witty one, the borderline androgynous one. Very witty, almost catty. He's like got the gift of gab, right? So having Mercutio be this limericky, speaking wordsmith type guy, very in line with Mercury, Mercutio. And then who's the instigator? Who's the agitator? Tybalt, 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 Tybalt with a T-Y. That's for Tyr, Tour, Tuesday, Tyr, tyrant, tirade, terror. That all goes back to Tyr, T-Y-R. T-Y-R, that's Mars. That's the Germanic name for Mars. Tyr, that's where we get Tuesday. In Spanish, it's Martes for Mars, but in English, it's Tuesday. Same god. Martes, Martyr, Tes, Tuesday. That's just Tyr. That's where we get the word tyrant, ruled by terror. So, Mars, the rune for Mars is the T, too. The T rune. So this is why it's tired. You get tired, you're worn out. You've been exercising, you've been exerting yourself. That's a martial influence. So, Stanley Kubrick used these. Okay. So, yeah, Romeo and Juliet, Mercutio. He's the witty, sharp-witted wordsmith, gift of gab. That's Hermes. That's Thoth. That's Mercury. That's Merlin, even the talker, right? Almost a little bit of a trickster, but not a malicious trickster. More of a mischievous, curious, right? In the name of education, trickster. So you'll find Mercutio fits that bill, and then Tybalt is the martial archetype. He's the instigator, if I'm not mistaken. He draws first blood and sets off the chain of events that wind up in other people's deaths. So that's Tybalt, that's Mars, that's the aggressor, it's the god of war. And Benvolio. This one might be, debatable, but Benvolio, Jupiter, the benevolent one. He's a little bit more peaceful. Some of you could say he's almost a pussy, like Jupiter, Jesus. Not as quick to jump to arms. Jupiter, seeking peace. Jupiter is the peaceful one, the planet of benevolence. So that's Benvolio, right? That's how you say his name, right? Benvolio. Haven't read that in a little bit. So you've got those ones are pretty dang obvious. And if you look at Shakespeare, it's almost always in the name too, like King Henry. You've got Percy Hotspur. Percy Hotspur. Pierce, hot, Percy, persecute, right? Hotspur, piercing, hot, stabbing, pushing forward, urging onward, a spur, hot spur. It's like Mars is like a cayenne pepper. Percy Hotspur, that's a hot, antagonistic name. And that's what Percy Hotspur is like. And some of the characters' names you don't have as much liberty with because they were real people, but other names you can tweak and bring to the forefront, and that's what Shakespeare would do. So that's the second layer to using astrology in your films, is using planetary archetypes. So he's aware of the astrological symbolism on a psychological, mythological level, using them as archetypes in storytelling. And then there's the character types. That's the second level to this. The character types, the archetypes. And then the third layer that I've never seen anyone do a video on YouTube ever, even astrologers. Casting. Casting your movie using astrology. Meaning, this person's going to play this role, and I need a Cancer to do it. Or I need a Gemini for this role. 10 people walking through the door, they're not a Gemini. Sorry, can't be in the movie. I'm not going to make do. I'm not just going to put someone in there, even if it's an insignificant role. This is what sets Stanley Kubrick apart. Rob Ager, I think his name is, the Stanley Kubrick review guy. I emailed him one time and said, I want to do a show. This is when my channel was pretty small. I said, I want to do a show, and I'm going to tell you a big secret about Stanley Kubrick's work as an astrologer, and I probably should have given it away, but it didn't. He didn't, pick up on it. I said, I'm going to tell you something, and I didn't word it like that. It wasn't like an ultimatum or something. But I said, I'd like to tell you something as an astrologer. I help run an occult bookstore. I have some insight into this stuff. I would like to tell you one secret, on camera, off camera, but from then you can run with it. So I was going to tell him about astrological casting a horoscope, right? The cast of a movie. No duh. That Stanley Kubrick was proficient, borderline obsessive, compulsive when it came to casting certain zodiac signs, actors of a certain zodiac sign, playing certain roles. Meaning they have no they have no choice but to express those archetypes because they are them. And Aries doesn't have to act like the aggressor, right? Aries are aggressors. Scorpio doesn't have to act like the villain, the betrayer, the traitor. They embody that. And I love Scorpios, but that's the time of year they rule, darkness, betrayal. The sun is betrayed. I would say that whatever. So this is the third layer to Kubrick movies, astrologically speaking, that he cast certain characters, certain actors to play certain characters based off of the actor's birthday, their zodiac sign, and then which character type they're going to play, those two matching up. So we're already an hour and a half in. I guess we're just going to have to go movie by movie. So at a later time, some other point. But just talking about his movie on screen right there, if we look at the cast of Spartacus, Kirk Douglas, the lead, playing Spartacus, is a Sagittarius. Kirk Douglas is a total Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules, you could say war. It's a fire sign. It also rules horses. So combat, cavalry charges, all horse activity, but also sport, all things for sport, meaning organized sports, especially with a ball or ballistic element, a projectile. Sagittarius rules almost all ball sports, projectile sports, team sports. Uh, competition in the pursuit of entertainment and fun and joy. Sagittarius rules that. And that's largely what horse riding's all about: is you're doing it for fun or you're doing it for war. And that's largely what guns is too, and sharpshooting, archery. Sagittarius rules those things too. So, especially the way we do war today, Sagittarius rules it. You travel, you amass your resources, things like that. So, the fact of, Aries rules war. Don't get me wrong, Aries rules war and battle. But what I'm saying is for sport. The closer it gets to sport and for fun, for play, that's Sagittarius. So combat sports, you could say Sagittarius rules too. But having Sagittarius in this role, Sagittariuses make great, gladiator, fighter, mercenary types, like Brad Pitt in Troy. That's a Sagittarius in a strong, warrior role, almost like stupid role. Like, when Sagittarius can be wise, but they're not like the smart, witty, like Robert Downey Jr. You know, type where it's a little bit more like what they have to say is what matters. Does anyone really care what Brad Pitt had to say? He just looked tough and strong, and dumb enough to like charge into certain death like a horse. So Sagittarius, they can be smart, but they're not, as far as character archetypes goes. Sagittarius is not like the smart, witty, funny. They're jovial. Sagittarius is jovial, but they are almost always playing a masculine, kind of like hot, dry, borderline, emotionless. Right? Not much. When you just watch Brad Pitt, Jake Gyllenhaal. It's not so much what they're saying and thinking and things like that. It's more just occupying the space as a tough guy, right? So, so Sagittarius, Kirk Douglas, Sagittarius, fighting for sport. That's the theme of the movie. Spartacus, even the word Spartacus, spear, sperm, sport, Sagittarius, the Milky Way, right? So Spartacus, there's a lot of lovemaking in this movie too, and some pretty moments of there's some like Roman, type servant orgy type scenes in this movie, and yeah, Sagittarius, Robert Plant. Sorry, Robert. Robert Plant. Robert Phoenix as Ted Nugent is a Sag and hunts with the bow. Yeah, and Ozzy Osbourne's a Sag and he's obsessed with sharpshooting. Go look at this. Ozzy Osbourne obsessed with sharpshooting. It's like one of the only things he does just for fun is shooting through a scoped rifle, BB gun, in like his backyard. And I say it all the time: the most successful sniper of all time, Simo Hauya, was a Sagittarius. Kirk Douglas, Sagittarius. This role, you can tell Brad Pitt in Troy, was very inspired. It echoes Kirk Douglas as Spartacus. the Sagittarius in the lead of like this Greco-Roman, mythological epic combat role. That's very Sagittarian. So Kirk Douglas was perfect for this role. Kirk Douglas looks like a Sagittarius too, has a bit of a horse face like me, high bridge to the nose. You can pet them like a horse. It's how you can tell a Sagittarius. You can pet them like a horse very often, and Kirk Douglas has that feature to a T. And the other thing that I'd have to say most about this is Kirk Douglas is doing a lot of fighting. I think he even picks up a bow at one point, but he's doing a lot of horse riding for sure. Sagittarius, another. If there's one sign that's going to be a leader, fire signs are leaders, right? Aries is the pioneer, first one through the door. Leo is the center of attention, the narcissist, the light that lights up the room when they walk in, the salesman. And then Sagittarius is like the last in that trifecta. So Sagittarius rules leaders, but it can be a wartime leader. It can be a rebellious leader, revolutionaries. Sagittarius is also rules leadership, but not in the entertainment sense that Leo does, and not in the pioneering sense that Aries does. But so Kirk Douglas, he's a great choice for this, and it was a logical selection for Spartacus, for a gladiator, right? Glad, Sagittarius, man. Sagittarius puts the glad in gladiator. That's a good way to say it. So Kirk Douglas was a big. Kirk Douglas practically made this movie. He was, I think, the biggest name in there. And his love interest in this movie is a Aquarius, which makes perfect sense. Sagittarius and Aquarius are the most compatible for each other, most compatible. And Sagittarius, fire, Aquarius, air, feed off each other. His love interest, Spartacus's love interest in this movie, Varinia, Jean Marilyn Simmons. Jean Marilyn Simmons. Not super familiar with her, but she's an Aquarius. Now, guess what? The first time that you see her and Spartacus interact, is she, the Aquarius, Jean Simmons, the Aquarius, is pouring a vessel. She's a water bearer, a servant, who's being a water bearer. Now, isn't that crazy? No, he's not Michael Sheen's dad. He's Michael Douglas's dad, not Michael Sheen's dad. Not sure. Is that a joke because your name's not sure? Charlie Sheen's dad is Michael Sheen. I confuse Michael Douglas and Michael Sheen too sometimes, but no. Okay, so she's an Aquarius. Martin Sheen, not Michael Sheen. Martin Sheen, right? Whatever. Basically, she, Varinia, is played by an Aquarius. The first time you see her in the movie, or at least the first time you see her interact with Spartacus, is when she's pouring wine or water out of a vessel. She's a water bearer. So go watch the movie Spartacus. You'll see the first thing she does, just about the first notable thing she does in the movie. The first thing she does is do what Aquariuses do. Pouring out a glass, pouring out a vase, pouring out of a urn, something like that. But yeah, she's filling up water or wine. Total Aquarius. It's almost like, I don't want to say lazy, but it's like he wants you to know it's an Aquarius. That's overt. So yeah, Spartacus. Not too many people have seen Spartacus. I love Spartacus. I think a lot of people have heard the Spartacus theme. That's been reworked by a couple different jazz artists and like trip hop artists. Very common melody. It's pretty good right there, right? That was I did a pretty good job on that one. I've only been whistling for like 3 years, but the melody, I'm in love with that melody too. Who does it? Um, Famous jazz artist does a really popular rendition. I don't know if it's who does it. Whatever. But yeah, so Spartacus, but Stanley Kubrick, most people I think know him from 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Shining, Eyes Wide Shut, Full Metal Jacket, probably in that order. Doctor Strangelove was huge too at the time. That kind of gets overshadowed by his later stuff. Um, Multiple generations, and then Barry Lyndon too. The Killing. I didn't care for The Killing too much, but Doctor Strangelove is also in my top five. One of the best movies there is, greatest movies. And then, yeah, but this astrological casting applies to all of those. To me, it started with Spartacus. I think Spartacus is 1960. Oh, Yusef Lateef. Thank you, Yusef Lateef. It's a common Irish melody. Wow, is that true? I didn't know that. That'd be cool if that's true. But we know in let's just talk about Doctor Strangelove. Brandon, if you could pull up a GIF of Doctor Strangelove, what's his name? General Ripper, or Lieutenant Ripper, Captain Ripper, whatever his name is. It's Ripper, the I don't know if he's the protagonist, or the antagonist, but General Ripper from Doctor Strangelove. Well, what do you think he is? This goes back to that Percy Hotspur, right? General Ripper. Martial archetype. He's a ripper. He's like a pit bull. He's a bulldog. So, having a General Ripper as an Aries, that's that burning hot, antagonizing antagonist. It's the antagonist. Aries, ruled by Mars, it's agitating, instigating, things like that. So General Ripper. No, not that guy. There he is. Yeah, General Ripper. Him. Yep. Boom. Bingo. Precious bodily fluids. Aries is the most aggressive sign of the zodiac. They're also the least self-aware. So him saying all these things, all like out of pocket, off the cuff, very Aries. Borderline foolish. He's kind of a foolish character. And All these are Aries things. So having General Ripper in there, also he was the lead character in The Killing, I believe. Aries, The Killing, Mars, Aries, War, Slaughter. Yeah, all goes hand in hand. General Ripper is a martial archetype, of course, but also he's trying to tell what he's trying to tell us. Jack Ripper, yeah, Jack Ripper, totally. Martial, to Jack, to Rip, martial, all the way. But maybe you could even say maybe Scorpionic or Plutonian too. But dark, aggressive, martial influence. General Ripper, and like I said, a little bit foolish, right? Kicks off a lot of trouble, kicks off a lot of mayhem, chaos. Very martial, very Aries. He's an Aries. This guy, what's his name? His name's like Sterling or something. General Ripper was played by Sterling Hayden. Sterling Hayden, big, tall guys. He's like 6'5", tall Aries. Very often you get that tall type, like Eli Manning. Not Eli Manning, sorry, Peyton Manning. They can spring up, get tall, right? Any sign can be tall, but Aries, you see it a lot. You get a tall, strong, masculine, just, as masculine as it comes. Aries is the most masculine sign of the zodiac, dare I say. It's probably close with Sagittarius too, but Aries, it's martial, it's man. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. General Ripper, martial archetype. He's an Aries. Born in Mars, something like Mars 26th or something. Very martial. And the lack of awareness and kind of just a willingness to say anything to anybody. I mean, that's like sharing things with strangers. That's very, very Aries. Off the cuff. Aries is like, man, should have kept your mouth shut. Man, why did I do that, right? So Aries is General Ripper's hitting all those nails on the head. And also, I should say, what is it? Peter Sellers, I think he's a Virgo. Peter Sellers. He's the guy who's playing multiple characters in the movie. That's a Virgo thing. If Gemini would have fit there too, and he's very witty, but you'll notice, to me, I look at the planet behind Virgo with that. He's totally in this mercurial archetype. The witty one, multiple characters at the same time, gift of gab, talking, communication. That's Mercury. It's coming through Virgo, but it also rules Gemini, which is why Gemini has all those characteristics. And Peter Sellers, he's the president, he's Dr. Strangelove, and he's the British soldier getting held hostage by General Ripper. And General Ripper, he's shooting a machine gun barehanded, holding it with his hands. He's bracing gunfire. He's just standing in oncoming gunfire. All this is Aries. And the fact that he's all steam, full steam ahead until it seems that until there's a tiniest bit of pushback, or there's a hiccup in his plan, and just kills himself. Oh shit, I shouldn't say it on YouTube. Puts out his own lights, turns the gun on himself, goes out in a bang. No thought, doesn't think about it too much, just over in a flash. All this very Aries. Aries is like riding a motorcycle crash straight into a wall going 100 miles an hour. And that's kind of what General Ripper does. And the bodily fluids thing, he's reworking this book I don't know how much of that was in the original book or the original story, but precious fluids, man. There's things that you choose to put in the movie from the book, and there's things that need to be in the movie from the book, and then there's things that you choose to be in the movie from the book. That's one of the lines that he chose to be in there. I don't know the specifics on where the story comes from, but he putting the precious bodily fluids in there. I think Stanley was trying to tell us something. Back then, I don't think they were putting Easter eggs in it in movies like that just because. I think he was trying to get the word out on that, right? Even if it's in a satirical way. It's this crazy guy. Are they wrong? Isn't fluoride a commie plot? For those that haven't seen the movie, a good portion of it, a couple minutes or so, is on fluoride, and fluoride being in tap water, and about how Sterling here can see, General Ripper can see the commie plots, can see through the communist plots because he hasn't been drinking anything but some type of hard liquor. What does he say? Malt liquor and distilled water or rainwater. He says he doesn't get any fluoride and he doesn't drink anything except his own distilled liquor and rainwater. So basically, he's kind of truthing how you can stay away from fluoride, get your own water. And it's kind of like the Who's Seen the World Peace sketch where Charles, World Peace, $1 Million Extreme, where they're making tap water. And he says, yeah, we put birth control in the water because if you don't put drugs in the water, people get angry and they have a genuine reaction to what's wrong with the world, which is getting angry, flipping cars, and maybe even killing politicians and things like that. And they get angry. That's what normal people would do. So not getting angry, the fact that we're all very pacified is because we're being sedated through the water, and Kubrick was pretty much hinting at that. Um, Precious bodily fluids. Yeah, so he talks about the fluoride in the water and then the preserving bodily fluids. It goes hand in hand, the fluoride in the water with not he's pretty much advocating for semen retention, no fap. He's kind of going a step farther though, where he's saying even when you make love to a woman, no climax. Robert separating it, right? No fap king, no nut. The no nut. What's a funny name? No nut. Whatever. Robert Sepper technique. No nut mentality. But this whole thing is, losing your essence after lovemaking, losing your piece of yourself, and that conserving that vital essence, that vital force will help you not get swept up in the commie plot. So, clean water. Don't be dropping nuts left and right, and you'll be pretty well defended against commie plots. The only bad thing is if you're an Aries, if you're seeing the world through a clean lens, you might get pissed off. You might, pop off like General Ripper did. If you see everything for what it's truly worth, it might not be a pretty picture. That's kind of the General Ripper, one of his messages, you could say. But yeah. So we're at 2 hours here. I guess we did his birth chart. I might have to retitle this Stanley Kubrick's birth chart and a little bit of character astrology. I don't know what the word for that is, but yeah, we'll get together and do this another time. But we've got to shout some stuff out here. Maybe I've got a little video I can do. So guys, if you'd like to support the channel, we've got a couple ways you can support the channel. Like I said, we'll be back doing this another day. But it's his happy birthday stream, right? There wasn't too much thought or preparation put into this, but it's Stanley Kubrick's birthday. So I wanted to remark on it, and very grateful for his movies, and yeah, whatever. So here I've got this thing.
Here are a couple of...
Can you hear that? I think you guys hear that. Well, we're gonna sign off here. I'll be back maybe tomorrow or something. But yeah, you're right. Barely got started, but good topic. I was working all day, don't have much gas in the tank. I've got more work to do too. Editing some big time videos. Got one big video coming out soon. It's kind of caught up in a little bit of a monetization issue with YouTube right now. So wrestling to get that out soon, but hell yeah. All right, boys and girls. Clean water. Don't be fapping left and right. Don't be dropping nuts for no reason. You'll be guarded against commie plots. Here, we got this little clip right here that we're going to read, and then we'll sign off. Pay attention right here. Here are some ways you can support the channel. At the end of the video, never at the beginning. But, alright, y'all. Peace. Have a good night. Adios. R.I.P. Stanley Kubrick. We'll have to talk about this a whole nother time, about the end of his life, the mysteries, things like that. Alright, adios.
ways you can support the channel. Here are a couple of ways you can support the channel.
Make sure to check out Florida's #1 metaphysical book and crystal store, The Dancing Elephant in Palm Beach County. You just might find me there at work. If you're not in the area, go use the code OWF at dancingelephant.shop for 10% off.
Monad is a compendium of philosophical writings by three major Neoplatonist philosophers, Plotinus, Porphyry, and Proclus. The most accurate and potent translations of the Neoplatonists were done by Thomas Taylor in the early 1800s, and we have made those translations available in a new hardcover edition, limited to 2,000 copies. This book is an 800-page hardcover behemoth featuring an introduction by the one and only Ken Wheeler, with cover art by Benjamin A. Vierling, and a frontispiece by Kuba Sokolsky. Copies can be purchased for a discounted price of $50 during our pre-sale, to be found at galloglassbooks.shop. Unleash your crown chakra with our 100% cotton Make Atlantis Great Again visors, available at oldworldflorida.myshopify.com. Shop Butterfly Pea Flower Tea and Shilajit with code OWF for 10% off at sipblue.com. Shop Organic Moringa with code OldWorldFlorida for 10% off at themoringaman.com. Join our Patreon for uncensored, ad-free content, patreon.com/oldworldflorida. Some of the music featured in this video was created by Dr. Longo, some of it was sourced from public archives, but a majority was composed by Rustin Gross, a multi-instrumentalist and professional musician residing in Palm Beach County, Florida. You can support Rustin by following him on Instagram, Rustin_Gross with an E, or visiting his website www.rustinmusic.com.
Dr. Narco Longo.
Brought to you by the Florida Department of Magic.
Welcome to Florida, baby. conduits, the original Garden of Eden.
Florida has the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world.
Florida oranges are the golden apples of mythology. A race of giant men once roamed this peninsula. The Smithsonian can suck my balls.
Florida is littered with many ancient megalithic ship anchors, known as sacks or stones.
I'm bringing Saxa back.
Noah's Ark was constructed out of gopher wood. Gopher wood only grows one place in the world, Florida. Florida is the birthplace of the United States. The first Thanksgiving was in Florida.
old world.